Hi, and congratulations on completing week 2, Understanding Old Testament Narrative Part 1. So this week we really tried to understand some of the components of narrative and how they're put together. And you did your first word study, perhaps of all time, and likely realized how difficult and how exhaustive and probably exhausting a word study really is. And I'm going to give you an example from a student who was not perfect, but nearly perfect, and kind of show you what she did on the word study as an example for your own. And so far, it's Monday right now, so I haven't completed all the grading, especially those who haven't finished. But everything that's come in so far, I've already graded, and the assignments were very good. Few hundreds, but lots of high marks, and I appreciate all the effort that this assignment takes. So for assignment 2-1, you were to look up perhaps necessarily all, but there are 200 and something, and I asked you to look up at least 30 of the occurrences of Hesed, usually translated or often translated kindness in the ESV, and I gave you the Strong's number. Now, Strong's is a very old system, and so it really talks about the word as C-H-E-S-E-D or C-H-E-S-S-E-D. More modern uses and more modern scholarship would go directly to the Hebrew, which is H-E-S-E-D or H-S-D. So you were to look at all of those, and let me bring up an example here and kind of move it around so you can see it. Here we go. Okay, so again, this is a student's assignment from this week. And she looked up in the passage you were assigned the word, and in the NIV it's kindness, NASB loving kindness, ESV steadfast love, King James mercy, New Living Translation unfailing love. So here we already get quite a range of meaning, even in this one passage. Sorry, a range of meaning of how the word works. So in part 1, that's all you were to do. Part 2, you were to look at least 30 different occurrences of the word. So here it is used in redemption from enemies and troubles. So then in 2013, use of man in sense of loyalty in doing a favor or benefit. And again, right off the bat, we're getting to some of the key components. Loyalty is a huge part of the use of this word. Redemption is a huge part of this word. So already this student has identified aspects of the word that are important to understanding the word, especially with God's character. So here we have a whole bunch of analysis, and so that's the core of your analysis. Now for step 3 then, really becomes, in my opinion, the core of your paper that is to follow. Because here they've identified that there are 4 primary uses, and you could go a lot of different ways. In fact, you could do loyalty as one way and others. But here they have redemption, general favor, favor for benefit or exchange, and great emphasized extent of favor as an extension of general favor. So if you'll notice in their paper to follow, they use this as their outline and then use these passages as support. I think that's a great way to identify your paper. Other words, kindness, kindly, loving kindness, steadfast love, mercy, unfailing love, all of those work. Now, here is one deduction that I took off from papers, and it was a 1 point deduction, but should have identified where these similar words come from and why you picked them. So in step 4, examine the immediate context. So here we should be looking at Genesis 24, before and after the use of the word, and what that means in understanding the word in context. And then in step 6, stepping back Examine the book. So this should be restating and giving more information about every use in Genesis. Step 7, examine the author's books which have the same word. So author is Moses. Moses wrote Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. So here should have been a review of all the Pentateuch. And so that should have been here, and that's missing, so that's a small deduction. Here they said look below, but this one says examine occurrences in the New Testament books or Old Testament books. So this should be a summary of the non-Pentateuch occurrences. So that was backwards in this. And then in 9, examine occurrences in the Septuagint. So this one, again, I wasn't sure how to count off because I know it's difficult as an undergrad to be able to do this, but what I was looking for, the Old Testament was written in Hebrew, but in about 300 BC, some scholars from Egypt in Alexandria, 70 of them to be exact, put together a Greek version of the Old Testament. So they used Greek words to translate each of the passages. So if you look at the Septuagint and you see what Greek word these individuals used, then you can leapfrog using the Greek word to go into the New Testament and see where this word, even though it's not hesed, it would be the Greek version of that word, is used. And this student did a really good job finding that in Ephesians 2:7, in a passage that says, in order that in the coming age he might show the incomparable riches of his grace expressed in his kindness to us in Jesus Christ. Well, what they've used here is the word, or translated the word kindness, but in the context of Ephesians, and this is to me the crux of the entire word study, and you can get it by just being in the Old Testament, but it just kind of jumps off the page here in the New, that in order that the coming ages he might show the incomparable riches of his grace expressed in his kindness. So how would you translate or at least understand this passage? And I would understand it to say that this passage is about the incomparable grace, the amazing extended grace that God has given us through his loving kindness. So it links the word grace and loving kindness together here in Ephesians, and I think we can pull that back throughout the Old Testament, and I would argue that the core to this word is really understanding God's grace in our lives. And so it is a covenantal loving kindness of God. So hesed is this deep word that encompasses God's love for us, and that it is so rich that it includes grace or unmerited favor on our part, and it is a covenantal kind of love that includes this grace. So I think this is a phenomenal passage, and one that in the other papers I didn't see that leap through the Septuagint to the New Testament. I think that's great here. Looking up the word in a theological dictionary, person did a great job. Keep in mind that Hebrew words should be italicized, which they have done here, which I think is great. And here we have HSD, Hesed, which is the word we're exploring. And you can see why it's not CHESED really, or ESS, is this is an H, this is an S, that's a D. So that's why in modern usage we use just HSD or HESED. Anyway, all right, moving on. So return to the immediate context and discuss how the word is used. They did a great job there. And then moving on to their paper, they have identified it. First, kindness. Second paragraph, additionally, God's kindness is seen as his general favor. Absolutely. Third category, kindness is determined in this paper would be a favor with the exchange for benefit. And then typically that's not found with God, that's found with others. God's is a covenantal kind of love. The last category formulated in this paper will be examine the emphasized extent of favor. So what they've done is they've taken then they go on. But they've taken the third step here and used that as their outline, which is, I think, a great way to do a word study. So hopefully between doing your own assignment and seeing the example that I gave on a different type, and then the example on this, next time you have a word study in a different class, you'll be able to blow them away with this great skill to understand a word. Or as you're doing your own Bible studies from now on, you'll be able to go into the tools you use this week and really better understand some of the core words that are found in passages that you'll be exploring. So in our second assignment, assignment 2.2, you were to look at context. After completing the reading incline, write a 2 to 3 page paper summarizing the proper way to conduct a contextual study of the Bible. Be sure to include a discussion of the historical context, include a conclusion, reflecting upon the importance. So some of the keys were identification of different forms of context. Immediate, literary, historical were some of the ones given in the reading. Interaction with the reading and a thorough discussion of each form of context, and then interpretation and discussion around different biblical passages and how context would impact, our understanding. And then finally, we had a discussion post, in your opinion, which means informed opinion. And by informed, I mean with outside reading, engagement with the reading from this week, and biblical passages. Does the Bible's author and use of narrative components like plot, character development, and dialogue diminish authority? And obviously, everyone is going to say, of course not, because the Bible is inspired. But I really wanted you to go deeper, which is why, of course not. The real question has two parts. How much input into the message does the human author have? Can the human author change events, make up dialogue? Or does it have to be historically 100% accurate, especially knowing that history writing at the time was not the same as history writing today? History writing at the time could include exaggerations, could include hyperbole, could include fictitious writing, all that has a kernel of truth in what we would call truth in historical accuracy. Do stories have to be historically accurate, or are they or is it okay for them to be illustrative of a message? I wanted to see biblical support, interaction with the reading, personal reflection, and application. And of course, I wanted to see discussion over multiple sessions. So going in and making 5 comments on Saturday morning is not full marks for discussion. Going in and making 2 comments on Saturday morning, 2 comments on Sunday morning is full marks for discussion. So I'm wanting to see engagement over multiple sessions. Okay, thanks for all the great effort. This has run a bit long. I appreciate all of the hard work. Week 2, I think, is one of our hardest weeks. So you're through that, and week 3, we just have 2 assignments. So have a wonderful week. Thanks again for the effort, and I'll talk to you soon.